there any questions for staff?
Oh, I do. I guess I have one question. Is there going to be, at another point, the garage sticking out further than much further, that those extreme examples kind of look like that wasn't such a great idea. At any time, are we going to maybe revise that? Or add something in that states what the standard should be?
We don't have any plans at this time, but it's something we could potentially look at in the future.
Okay.
Good question. Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion for this, unless you have another question.
No, I don't.
You sure?
I'm positive.
Okay.
I make a motion that we forward the amendments to Chapter 18.05.035 of the Gardner Municipal Code and amendments to Sections 1.1.3 and 1.6.1 of the Gardner Design Standards to the City Council with a recommendation for approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion made by Barber with a second by Gilmore to forward the amendments of Chapter 18.05.035 of the Gardner Municipal Code and amendments to Sections 1.3, 1.1.3, and 1.6.1 of the Gardner Design Standards to the City Council with a recommendation for approval. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with all in favor. New business item number 3, the zoning ordinance text amendment initiation. Consider initiation of a text amendment to Section 18.170.020, 18.170.030, and 18.170.040 of the zoning ordinance regarding standards for signs in the agricultural and residential districts. We have a presentation this evening.
Yes, a very brief presentation, Madam Chairman. So the 3 sections that you referred to in your introduction are attached to the staff report. These 3 sections of the sign code regulate signs in the agricultural and all of the residential districts. Keep in mind that both the residential and non-residential uses are permitted in these districts. In some cases, they're expressly permitted. In some cases, they're approved by conditional use permit. Some of these uses are churches, schools, hospitals, nursing homes, and other uses. But the sign regulations don't clearly provide standards for all these uses. If you look at the paragraphs in Section 18.170.020, there's a standard for a home occupation, there's a standard for a church, there's a standard for a residential subdivision entrance sign, and then there's actually a standard in here for temporary signs. So when someone proposes a sign for one of these uses that are not listed in here, it leaves some room for interpretation as to what's appropriate. In some cases, any of these standards might be overly restrictive with respect to the type of signage these other types of uses might require for adequate wayfinding and identification. One of the problems that's been most obvious is with schools. Schools are large buildings with multiple entrances on large sites, and the standard, there isn't something that specifically addresses signs for schools. If you were to take the standard of signage for a church, it's one small detached sign. It doesn't really provide for any wall signs, and that's been a problem. So for these reasons, staff is requesting that the Planning Commission initiate this text amendment to these sections of the zoning code. And upon it being initiated, staff will publish a notice of a public hearing, prepare a text amendment, a draft text amendment, and bring that forward for the Planning Commission's recommendation and ultimately for the governing body's decision. That's all I have, unless you have any questions. I believe Gary Diener with the USD 231 School District is here. You might have some comments to make on this. With that, I'll take any questions, or I'll go sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you, the staff gonna be working with the school district to come up with, what the guidelines would be for schools?
I think what, my way to approach this would not to be just to address signs for schools, but to make sure that the sign standards are appropriate, so we don't run into this problem with other types of uses. So, I'm not sure what those standards would look like at this point, but it involves more than schools. Certainly, the school district will have an opportunity to review the draft, just like anybody else that is interested, but, and we provide them that opportunity.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Do you have a representative from the school district here, if there's any questions?
An initiation to begin this.
To begin the
So,
process,
you know.
yes. So I think we'll, more time for questions later, but now it's always good if there's any. Do you have any questions or comments? I'd entertain a motion on that.
I make a motion that we initiate a text amendment to sections 18.170.020, 18.170.030, and 18.170.040 of the zoning ordinance regarding standards for signs in the agricultural and residential districts.
Second.
I have a motion made by Barber with a second by Lavella that the Planning Commission initiate a text amendment to sections 18.170.020, 18.170.030, and 18.170.040 of the zoning ordinance regarding standards for signs in the agricultural and residential districts. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries with all in favor. That is it with the new business items. Under other business, we have a comprehensive plan update.
This is just a quick update on the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is in the process of being drafted. The next major step would be for a completion of the draft and a presentation to the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. Meeting has been scheduled for June 26th. Beyond that, there will be a community open house on the 28th. That's the reason for the rescheduling of your Planning Commission meeting in July. It's actually June 28th, I meant July 28th. July 29th, we anticipate bringing that item to you in a public hearing for your consideration. And then it would go to the City Council, most likely a work session in August, and then go to City Council for consideration in September. What's very important is that we try to answer any questions about process or about what the comprehensive plan means, how it's used, that we can up front. And so if you would like to have a special session or a special meeting, perhaps in the first half of July or anything like that, we'd be happy to do that. And it wouldn't be for action, it would be for, or it wouldn't be for a recommendation, it would just be for educational purposes.
I wouldn't mind that.
That would be
That.
a good idea, I think.
So what we could do is send out an email and just ask for a couple dates. We could do that.